Rosa, Antonia will be speaking on the topic.
Thank you so much for that introduction.
Rosa, Antonia
Yes?
speaking on the topic.
Am I on? Okay. Sounds like we're okay now. Thank you so much for that introduction, Susan. And I'm so happy to have this opportunity to talk again about my favorite subject, which is that safety is about people. That's what I wrote. My book is really about the relationship factor in safety performance. I want to tell you that everything I've learned from the people that I was working with. And so Ron's point is very well taken, that the best way to find out what is going on or how to fix something is to actually go into the field and talk to people. That's what happened to me way back in my aha moment, because I was trained like everyone else with engineering systems and a very linear point of view, how to do systems analysis and especially root cause analysis. So I was sent out very early in my career to a plant that experienced a fatality. And I was, my job was to facilitate a root cause analysis. So I had in front of me the workers and supervisors that had known the worker who was killed. He was a 22-year employee, very well liked, very reliable. And he had been working with this particular piece of equipment for years, so he wasn't new to the situation. And yet he had made a fatal mistake. He reached in to a piece of equipment with his hands. It was a set of rollers. He was caught in the rollers and crushed. So we're sitting in a circle about to begin, and I explained the root cause analysis process. And one of the employees says, "Rosa, we already know what caused this accident, this fatality." And I said, "Oh, well, what do you think it is?" And they said it was lack of trust and open communication. Of course, I said, "No, those are not root causes. Those are symptoms, and we have to look at where the system broke down in order to really prevent this from happening again." And he said, "No, the root cause of this is lack of trust and lack of open communication." So I asked him why, and he said, "It's because we tried for months to tell management and the safety department that this piece of equipment was not functioning, but they didn't pay any attention. They wouldn't listen until somebody has died." In that moment, I felt that a whole world was open to me, because I realized that information is raining down upon us that could help us prevent these serious accidents and fatalities, but we are not listening. We're not listening. I became very excited because I thought, oh, okay, if management realized this, of course they would change the system and begin to listen to the workers. So we put together a proposal where there would be regular meetings and bring in the workers and discuss these issues. I was thanked very much by management and never invited back. That was a harsh lesson to learn, that you can have all the information and offer all of the information, but if someone isn't listening, then you're not really communicating. So that is my story, and I'm sure you all have your own story when you had an aha moment and it was delivered by people that you were working with, and oftentimes the workers in the field. So let's go to the first slide. And of course, the reason that people don't follow the procedure, obviously there was a procedure in place not to put your hand or arm into this piece of equipment. So why would a very experienced employee who knew better do so? And that leads me to my main point in my book, that safety management is more than policies and procedures. In fact, the relationships around us and what we've learned, I think Ron said it very well, that we have a social network around us that we trust, that we believe, and we will pretty much do the work according to the information we get from them. So let me show you one of the trusted and trues in the next slide. One of the trusted and true diagrams that we often use is called the systems iceberg, safety systems iceberg. And the traditional one begins with us looking at people's mental models. Now, what we are talking about is something that is a big change. So I want you to really keep an open mind that what we're talking about now is based on science, a lot that has been discovered over the time. And so I have replaced the mental models, which comes from culture, which comes from the way we were trained and the way that people think. I have replaced that with the quality of relationships. And the reason I've done that is because depending on the quality of our relationship and the type of relationship we have with the person that we want to communicate is what kind of relationship do we have with them. Now, in the story I told, the management group, and even the safety professionals did not have a relationship of trust or respect, which is why we listen to people when they give us information. Oh, I better listen to this person because they have my back. They have my best interest at heart. And those relationships are the ones that generate what we've been talking about so much, which is psychological safety. Can I really trust this person or this group to say what's on my mind, what's really going on? Because when we don't have that, then people just nod their heads. Yep, okay. And then they go back and they consult with their own social group and they do what they think is right. So as a safety professional, we have to have a relationship with the people that we work with that generates psychological safety. And so I want you to be thinking about the relationships, and think about someone that you have really good open communication with, and they're responsive and you're responsive to them. And think about that quality of that relationship. What is the quality of that relationship? And then compare it to someone that you have difficulty communicating with, that seems resistant, that doesn't follow directions, that maybe somebody higher up in the organization that disregards you, doesn't listen to the information that you're trying to present. Now, take a deep breath and close your eyes and visualize the difference between those two relationships, and it would be great if you put into the chat what is the difference between those two relationships. All right, and I'm pretty sure, even without looking, is that it's someone that you trust, it's someone that you've reached out to and built a relationship. And the other one, maybe you've tried to build a relationship, maybe you have tried to reach out, but you haven't been successful. So we look at the quality of relationships when we're doing an analysis of an event. And as you can see, the event is very much at the top up there. And many of us react to what just happened. And I was in a meeting of safety professionals that were very frustrated because they wanted to look at the root cause and deal with root causes and deal with relationships. But the board of directors had just issued a decision that they were going to be compensated. Their bonus was going to be compensated on hand injuries. So now they had to dedicate themselves to how do we prevent hand injuries. That's what we call reacting to the event, and that's at the tip of the iceberg, which ignores all of the things that came before it. Now, some of us go one step deeper into the iceberg, which is look at trends or patterns, which is what these folks at the board level probably looked at. There's a lot of hand accidents happening. We have to take steps to anticipate, when this is going to happen again. Little knowing that down below the iceberg are several levels more. Now, the safety professionals, of course, are going to look at the next level down, procedures, JSAs. They're going to maybe work with HR to design new processes to prevent the hand injuries. Unfortunately, below that is our beliefs that we have formed from experience about the way work should be done. And again, I want to refer to Ron Gantt's talk because the way that we're doing the work is based on real experience and real information that is given to us from people that we respect and we know that they're competent. So the reason people are taking unsafe actions has to do with a deep belief they have that it's safe, that it's okay, or perhaps it's driven by other necessities such as, oh my gosh, this piece of equipment, it's stuck again, and I am the one that has to make it go so that we can meet our deadlines, so that we can finish the work. And anyway, I have a lot of experience and I know how to do this, and I'll be safe. Story of many a fatality. So you can't really change beliefs by going at them, straight at them. You can't gather people in a group and say, I want you all to change your belief. I want you all to stop sticking your hands in moving equipment. And I know that we've all tried that at some point in our career, and we've shown them bloody pictures of how people, the end results of doing such things, to no avail. Because what we do, how we think, is mostly driven by our social network, by our peers, by the people that we trust and that we truly communicate with. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'd like to talk with my moderator, AJ, because I am not seeing the slides as they come up on my screen. Am I supposed to be seeing them? Well, that's okay. We'll proceed because I have my other screen, okay? I'll just assume that you are doing it. AJ and I have a trust relationship, right, AJ? Yes. And so that's a good example of a conversation to clarify what has taken place. But my point is, of course, I trust AJ. Even though I've only met him a few days ago, I know he's competent, and I trust him because of the relationship he has with other people I trust. So it's not always a direct relationship. Sometimes it's because somebody has introduced you to someone. But the main point is that we can talk until we are blue in the face, but if we don't have that trust relationship, we're not being listened to. And that's the crux of the problem with that fatality story that I was telling you about, that employees tried to tell the safety professionals and management that there was something wrong with the equipment, and they were not listened to, and it led to tragedy. So if we go to the next slide, we see that we are hardwired for relationship from the moment that we are born. We depend on others for survival. We know that instinctively. And we will do anything to keep those relationships. Even after we are adults and we think that we're very independent, there's something within us that is hardwired by nature to really worry about the possibility of losing a relationship or being ostracized by a group that we value. We have a little short video to show at this point. So AJ, since I can't see it, I will. Oh, there we go. It's working now. I've closed my slides. Okay. Could we show that video on inclusion and belonging, please? It was embedded in the slide. Okay. All right. Basically, it's a famous experiment that really brought to mind that created the science behind the idea that people do behave differently, and they react emotionally when they feel that there's a chance that the group is ostracizing them, excluding them. For example, if you expected to be invited to a meeting and you weren't invited, of course, your mind starts going into why didn't they invite me? Have I lost credibility? Am I about to get fired? So all of these thoughts just go through our mind. And AJ, don't worry about the video. I'll just talk about it. What they actually did was they put people under an MRI, and they connected their brain up to sensors. And there was one experimental subject who did not know that they were an experimental subject, because they had told everyone else, we're going to be playing a cyberball game, and we don't want you to toss it to this one person. Within about 3 minutes of that game starting, the person who was not getting the cyberball, the brain began to show activity and trigger the same places that get triggered by fear of ostracism, fear of actually physical threat of life. This is really significant because in the past, we've always thought that, in Maslow's hierarchy, we thought that people's basic bottom line safety net was food, shelter, and it turns out that the fear of loss of relationship is actually at the same level as fear of physical injury or loss of life. That was mind-blowing to me when I found that out, because I realized that we're so used to talking about whatever we want to talk about, and we don't realize that the information could be impacting people's sense of personal security. In the next slide, you'll see that the brain, this is what happens to the brain when we are feeling physically threatened or threatened with a loss of relationship. So we're on. Okay. There is another video further on that you might look into. Okay. All right. So this is what happens to the brain when we are under a physical threat. You can see things like the ability to remember decreases, executive functions decrease, problem-solving abilities reduce. The message receptors are shut down. Now remember that what I said before, that true communication only occurs in a relationship of trust. So if we don't have the relationship of trust, the threat is always active at some level, and those receptors are closed down. Now I will ask you to reflect on this condition of the brain. How effective are we going to be in detecting our environment, in noticing hazards and noticing threats outside of ourselves? We're far too engaged internally thinking about, what's going to happen to me next? How am I going to get the next job? I better get on LinkedIn and update my profile. So this is what's going on in people's minds instead of what you are trying to communicate. That's a sobering thought. Okay, so I believe in our next slide, we have a poll. Do we have that, AJ? Okay, thank you. Since I can't see the results of the poll, AJ, could you let me know when it's complete and what the results are? So as you're answering, I can tell you that I typically go out, for example, if I'm going to hire a plumber, I have a network in the neighborhood, and I'll just ask them for a recommendation. And then, or if I have someone, I might ask them if they've ever worked with so-and-so. And what they tell me about that person determines who I choose. So companies are very aware that what employees are saying about them either attracts talent or rejects or pushes away talent. And so you have websites like Indeed that I know I go there. If a client asks me to help them, I go to Indeed, or the other one, I think it's called the Glassdoor, and I see what the employees are saying. And then when I go to meet with the management group, I pretty much know what's going on there in terms of their the relationships in the organization and their culture. It's taking a while for people to answer the poll. I'm wondering what's going on. Are we getting responses, AJ? Okay, that's great. We'll see what your experience has been like. So this question of attracting good talent is a huge one for employers. I don't know how often they think about at this level that we're talking about. Are people do people feel included? Do people feel they belong when they come to work in your organization? Or are they operating under that threat of being excluded? All right. So it looks like the majority of people said that, the picture of me is blocking the answers. Let me see if I can move it. Yeah, I can move it a little. Okay, so it's a great place to work. Okay, so I like that. That's the majority of you. And that tells me something else, because of course when we get data, we make inferences from it, right? That the people attracted to this conference are people who feel psychologically safe. And only one person felt that it's not great, but the money is good. And you're not, you may be alone in this poll, but you're certainly not alone in the workforce. I would look elsewhere, and it used to be a great company, and now it isn't. And again, because I've talked to thousands of employees and hundreds of managers and supervisors, I can tell you pretty much like D used to be a great company and now it isn't. Mergers, layoffs have shifted some very well-respected clients into an atmosphere of mistrust, simply because people don't feel secure anymore. They don't feel there's any kind of loyalty towards them. So that's another form of psychological safety, right? Am I going to have a job? Financial instability will wreck your culture, and that because it threatens that bottom line of psychological safety. So if you're operating in that environment, it seems that most of you are not, but if you are operating in that environment, what I would say to you is that you can, if you've decided that you do want to stay working there, is that you can build your own network of relationships with what we're talking about here today, and at least create a space around you of like-minded people that will make it much easier for you to work there and feel less stress while you look for another job, if that's an option that's open to you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here's the hierarchy of who's in and who's out. How do I feel that I belong? And this poll said that the most common response, I can voice a contrary opinion without fear of negative consequences. Okay, and that contrary opinion has a lot of range. And if you want to put into the chat what types of contrary opinions in your experience have caused a shutdown of communication with the powers that be, or maybe even with your work group. Here is the ranking of who feels they belong. And it's an upside down ranking, because at the top, the group that has the lowest level of psychological safety is Latinx women, and below them are the Black women. I mean, slightly above them are Black women. And then we can look down to LGBTQ women. So women are, and then we get to white women. So white women are most frequently feeling psychologically safe and most frequently feeling heard. But the women are all below the men. So I allow you to look at the men here. Going down to the bottom, of course, we have the white male. The straight white male feels the most psychologically safe in an organization. The way I have experienced this in my work, because I have done some inclusion and belonging work is that this person who's at the top of the pyramid will, when people try to tell them that they feel excluded because of the color of their skin or their background, they will say, or even, their level in the organization, they will say, no, I treat everyone the same and I respect everybody the same. And I, people talk to me and I say to them, well, that's how the people at the top of the pyramid usually feel, because everybody else is adjusting to you. They're adjusting to you to make you feel included. Because if they don't, they're very survival. This is not a logical thought, because I'm sure you are thinking, oh, I don't live there. I don't live at a level of survival. But we do. We do. The science says that we do. At some point, we all have to deal with the fact that we worry about whether or not we belong, whether or not we're being heard. And so that raises another question, really, in terms of leadership, which is, how do I create my own sense of belonging? But that's another lecture, because in the meantime, as a safety professional, you have to worry about creating that safe space. How do I create that safe space? So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So most people, as you can see, they were asked, what makes you feel like you belong at work? And this is another poll where 56% of the respondents said they believe most at work when they feel trusted and respected. So this is a good moment for us to go introspective and think, why do I feel trusted or respected? When do I feel trusted and respected? How am I being treated? Usually from when I talk to people, it's I'm not being micromanaged. I'm treated fairly. I'm being related to or managed in a way that respects my abilities, that shows that I'm a valued member of this team or the organization. So the ways that we feel trusted and respected are true for others, but the only way to make sure, because culture also plays a factor. So how do I feel respected might be different than somebody from South Africa or Brazil. And so that leads to the number one strategy for building trust, which is having conversations with people where you listen deeply and find out, ask them the questions. So let's find out. We're going to do a poll here to find out what's going on with you all. What makes you feel like you belong at work? AJ? Okay, fantastic. Okay. So as you all are, oh, there's the poll already. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, look at that. Well, not too many people are voting. Perhaps this question is too personal, but it is anonymous, isn't it, AJ? Okay. So let's, this is valuable for others, for us to see together as a group, because we're forming right now. This is hopefully we've created a psychologically safe space for us to learn and to grow, because that's That's the whole purpose of this conference and this workshop. And so many times in order to grow, we have to reveal something about ourselves that we haven't revealed maybe to anyone else. And then this helps us to realize maybe I should reveal this, because if I tell you the thing that makes me feel psychologically safe is when you respond to my polls or when you write comments in the chat, because it means that I'm connecting and I'm contributing. That's what makes me feel psychologically safe. And when I'm doing a presentation and there's absolute silence and nobody asks any questions, I go into my mind, oh my God, I'm bombing. And that creates a lower quality presentation. And that's the thing, that when we lower someone else's psychological safety, we get poor performance. That's what we get. So it looks like people have stopped chiming in. What's our top? There's two top ones, really. Take a moment to ask a person how they are doing and listen to the response. Don't you hate it when people ask, how are you? And then you know they're not listening. So you say, fine. When actually you might have said something that would be very helpful to the job or to the work. But since they're not listening, why bother? And down at the bottom, it says that the greatest gift is listening. And when you are listening, look at the person in the eye and just be present. And what does that mean, being present? Because, by the way, that is one of the top characteristics, maybe the distinguishing characteristic of a successful leader, a successful safety professional, is how good are you at listening? And we cannot be good at listening unless we can be with the person 100% in that moment. That means I'm not thinking about the project that is left unfinished. I'm not thinking about the last conversation I had, which was a bummer. Or maybe the next conversation. How do I prepare for the next conversation? No, I'm here with you 100%. And two things happen there. I'm creating psychological safety for you, and I'm creating psychological safety for myself, which is at the basic need in order to be able to listen to you. Because if I'm worried about being fired, or my next conversation is with my boss and it's not going to be a very good conversation, I'm not going to be a good listener. So thank you for verifying that. And now we're going to go to the next slide. Okay, the value of belonging at work. Now, these are interesting things that we're safety professionals. Well, how do we sell this idea? How do we get employers to pay attention to psychological safety and helping people feel included? So these are some statistics, pretty much global. They're global statistics from diverse industries, that you do get an increase in job performance. And usually, since we're talking about safety, yes, an improved safety performance. You get a 50% drop in turnover risk and a 75% reduction in sick days. So you can work the numbers on that and use them to your advantage to say, hey, this isn't just fluffy stuff. We're actually dealing with real performance issues here, real things that are valuable to the business. Let's go to the next slide. The International Labor Association, companies that care for the well-being of their people. Again, the same type of statistics. They included higher customer satisfaction and higher profitability. So those numbers are for you. All right, so let's go to the next slide, which is at the crux of our, okay, more numbers. I'd forgotten about this slide. The issues that contribute to lack of well-being at work. This is for us to consider, and maybe for ourselves personally, that stress is at the very top. Personal, financial concerns, poor work-life violence, the shortage in workloads because so many people have been laid off. So these are contributing to our stress, our lack of well-being, and the well-being of the people that we're working with. So we have to be aware that all of these, of course, lower psychological safety. And really, it's not within our power to change them from an organizational level. But we can lower the stress level by creating that psychological safety within our own work group. And you yourselves said it before that one of the best ways is to, hey, how's it going? And really listening and not giving up until they've told you how they are really doing. All right. And we don't have to fix things for them. We can't fix their financial concerns. We might be able to work on their work-life balance and help them get a better schedule. But the biggest impacting factor here is listening to them and letting them know that you care about them. All right. So the next slide is very important because this illustrates how you build trust and psychological safety. Next slide, please. All right. This is how we create miscommunication in the first place. Why trust breaks down, and it happens unconsciously. We see a behavior, we see something, or we hear something, and we assign an intention to it, usually from our past experience. So let's say my boss walks by, seems to be looking straight at me, but doesn't say hello. So I'm going to assign an intention based on my past experience that they are upset with something that I've done in my job. And I'm going to feel immediately threatened. Okay, this is a feeling that I really don't have much control over for the most part. But after that feeling, I do have a choice. And that's, I either go towards making a choice that will develop into a constructive interaction, or a choice of reacting to that feeling, which is to perhaps start talking about my boss and bad rapping them, gossiping, or maybe even start looking for another job because if my boss doesn't like my work. I mean, we just have that story that we build up in our mind based on this emotional reaction when we don't even really know why that happened. And that's a choice that we need to make, which is to inquire, to ask questions. And of course, this works in spades with the people that we're working with and responsible for, because if we see someone not following a procedure, rather than reacting, oh my God, I've told you a million times, that you should be wearing your safety glasses, that you should be, you shouldn't be sticking your hand into that equipment. The choice that we make is to sit down, let the person know that we value them. I mean, you're a 22-year employee and, you've always been very productive. Let's talk about why you're doing this. And then, of course, then the information will come up that we need to fix that situation. So this is our personal growth here. This is very much of our personal growth. Now, it has real impact because in our next slide, we're looking at what employees perceive. And it's really a poll that I want you to take to select the top 3 from an employee's perspective. I don't know if you can select the top 3, AJ, or is it the top 1? Because I realized that there were some limitations on instructions on this poll. Okay, so the top 3, please. What do you think employees say when we ask them, what are the management or safety professional behaviors that contribute to the breakdown of trust? And AJ, while they're answering, how much more time do I have? Oh, it says 12 minutes right there. Never mind. You guys are so efficient. That makes me feel psychologically safe knowing where I am on the clock. So people are answering this poll. Thank you for doing that. It really helps everybody's learning when you participate. Okay, so it looks like the top one so far is slow or non-response to employee concerns. And the next one is lack of communication, which is a very broad term. And those of you who said lack of communication, could you maybe put in the chat where communication is lacking, what type of communication is lacking, what would be your experience? Okay, it seems like everyone has answered. So the slow or non-response to employee concerns, actually the number one is lack of communication. So that kind of verifies my opening story, lack of trust and open communication. Right, but those two go hand in hand. Of course, we know that because when we don't respond to employee concerns, of course, people feel that we're not listening, and that can come under lack of communication. So in the next slide, I have put the top three, which are 1, 2, and 3. Meeting deadlines has priority over safety, management's lack of visibility, and not keeping commitment. Interesting. So what does that make you think about? What kinds of questions are you asking yourself? Why are these the top three? So I can give you a little bit of insight because I facilitated maybe 100 of these workshops, that the meeting deadlines has priority over safety is a very, very real belief that's driving safety in the workplace. The people make decisions based on that. And of course, the people they attribute this to are managers, right? That they're putting deadlines over safety. The second one, management's lack of visibility, I had heard that so often, but I didn't know what does that mean? You know, why do they want managers out there? So the behind that one is that managers don't really know what's going on in the workplace, and even safety professionals sometimes don't know what's going on in the workplace. So why are they putting out all of these rules when they don't know what they're talking about? However, if they came out and they talked to us and we saw them, they would begin to have a little bit more credibility. That's a deep one. Not keeping commitments. Really, I think that one is tied to slow response to employee concerns. Well, it does. I know that. Because the other types of commitments are, for example, in union negotiations, in union facilities, that's a huge one, where management promises they're going to do something, they negotiate, and then it doesn't happen. And particularly, we're talking now in relationship to safety, that people will just quit. They'll quit their support of the safety program because they feel that management didn't keep their commitment. So these are all questions of trust and reliability. So in the next slide, by the way, questions in the chat room. Select the top three from the employee perspective on what builds trust. That's another poll. And again, this is the employee perspective. Don't be afraid to vote, even though you might have been wrong last time. We're all learning here. All right. Oh, people are not voting. Maybe it's a hard question. Okay, I see some responses. I think what we're learning from, like, the difference between what the employees selected and what you selected as the top 3 causes of mistrust have to do with our position in the organization, because managers have their own culture, safety professionals have their own culture, and employees have multiple cultures, in fact, but the employees they have an overall culture, and then within that culture, they divide up into maintenance, operations, customer service, so on and so forth. So we tend to look at things from our own cultural perspective. Okay, let's see what the vote says here. We have 42 responses. So number 1 is well, they're kind of spread out, but number 1 is supervisors, managers, and safety professionals are visible and have meaningful conversations. Okay, well, from what I've been saying, that should be number 1. And then the next level is role modeling, and the next one is no blame. All right, so let's go to the next slide and look at what kinds of responses I have seen and gotten. Okay. Keeping commitments, show respect by listening when we say a job is dangerous, response in a timely manner to employee concerns. Okay. So again, we have to put ourselves into the employee's shoes and wonder why these would be the top 3. And probably if we look at the other, well, let's look at the other ones, because no blame focuses on fixing the problem. I think fits in with showing respect. But I guess it's a question here. I'm going to put myself in the employee's shoes for a moment, that the way they interpret your behavior is different from perhaps the way that you interpret your behavior or the intention of your behavior, which only goes to the point of, again, of putting yourself in the other person's shoes and talking with them, because that's really the only way you're going to know how they interpret their behavior. Let me just go to the next, I think we had another poll. Go ahead, put that up. Let's see. Okay. So what can we do to build trust? Okay, these are, and you're going to get the slides, so you will have these, but these are micro practices. Say good morning, hello, when you see someone for the first time that day. Take a moment to ask the person how they're doing. Keep your commitments. Come back to them and ask them if it worked. Ask, don't tell. Make it okay to ask for help and show emotion. So I'm not going to read all of these, but as you can see, it just means being yourself, being authentic, being a human being, and that's the good news. So whatever we need to do to get ourselves, what I say is choose one and try it out and see how it works. Start saying good morning and looking at people in the eye and using their name. You will see a response within a short time. And if you're asking them how they're doing, that's really important. So let's go to the last slide, because I want to leave time for questions, Q&A. Next. Last slide. Let's go to the last slide. Okay, so that's me, and I just wanted to tell you about my book and that it's available. So we can take the slide off the screen, and I would like to be able to take any. AJ, will you help me on questions, or maybe I can see them in the chat somewhere? I'm not sure how to get to the chat. Oh, here's the chat. Okay, that tells me that people are logged in, but I don't see it. What? And no comments on their experience? All right. So could someone, some brave soul, tell me what happened for them during the presentation? What would you think? What should I consider when I think about the fact that there were no questions or comments? Help me to learn from this. Anybody? Even in Central Africa, Facebook likes are believed to be more important than food and shelter. Thank you, AJ. He's giving me positive feedback. I witnessed our company presidents walk on site, yes. But nobody in our audience has, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Well, I see that the people who are working with me are putting in comments into the site. And I think that goes to the point that I was trying to make, which is that communication happens within relationship. And so perhaps I do have a relationship with our host because we have been communicating for a while about this. And of course, AJ and I had a relationship because we were communicating about how to get ready for this. And I will just leave that as food for thought. And anybody that wants to hook up, connect on LinkedIn, please connect. Rosa Antonia Carrillo, and perhaps there you might enter your comments. Thank you for being here.